learners! My name is Teacher Mechelle.
And I'm Teacher Cha. And today, we are here
To introduce Module 3 for Quarter 1 in English 7. So, let's get started!
The first part of the module is what I need to know. This section presents the purpose of module implementation. In other words, dito ninyo makikita ang mga layuning inaasahang inyong magagawa pagkatapos sagutan ang module na ito. At the end of this module, our goals are to differentiate active from passive voice. Next, to transform sentences from active to passive voice and vice versa. And lastly, use passive and active voice meaningfully in varied contexts.
Before we go on, let us see what you already know about the topic. On page 3, answer 1 to 15 of what I know. Let us read first the directions. Read the following sentences. Decide whether the underlined verb is active or passive. Write your answer on the space provided before each number. Let us answer number 1. The government announced lockdown on Metro Manila, followed by the entire Luzon. What do you think is the answer? Very good. The answer is active. For what's in, you are being reviewed about the previous topic to be connected to the new topic. Here, it is very important to distinguish simple past tense and past participle before you begin identifying active and passive sentences. What is a past participle? A past participle indicates a completed action. Here are some examples. For the first example, we have verb help. For the simple past tense, we have helped. And for the past participle, we have helped also. Here, for the regular verbs, you just create this by adding the, ed, or ied at the end of the word. But for the second example, we have whip, wept, wept. This is an example of irregular verbs, and this does not end in the, ed, or ied, and may not be the same as the past tense. But for this example, we have wept for simple past tense and we have wept also for past participle. They are the same. But how about the case that they are not the same? So we have here the example. Example of verb that does not have the same past tense and past participle. We have the verb go. We have the past tense of go is went and the past participle is gone. So go, went, gone. How can you learn this one? Or how can you learn the irregular verbs? The only way to learn them, or the best way to learn them, would be to repeat and memorize them. So the last example we have is work, worked, worked. Mom, we think that simple past tense and past participle are the same. How can we identify past participle and past tense in a sentence? So here is the first example for past tense. I helped my friend in doing her projects. It only means you simply helped your friend at some time in the past, but you may continue to help her at some point in the future. So if you analyze the sentence in the past tense, even though you already done the action in the past, you might still continue to do it at some point in the future. That is for simple past tense. Past participle in a sentence is here. I have helped my friend in doing her projects. So you can see there, if you analyze the sentence, you began helping your friend in the past and completed the action of helping her in the past. If you want the Tagalog version for this sentence, natulungan ko ang kaibigan kong gawin ang kanyang proyekto. So there, if you helped your friend in the past and you already completed the action in the past also, that is a past participle. Mom, can you give us some easy way or strategy where we will differentiate past tense and past participle of the verb? The best strategy is here. If it is a past participle, it always has or have, it uses an auxiliary or helping verb. Kapag po past participle, lagi silang two words or may kasama yung verb mo sa isang sentence. Ang tawag po sa kasama ng main verb mo, auxiliary or helping verb. Mama, ano po yung mga example ng auxiliary or helping verb? We have or has, had, is, are, was, were, am. Pag yan ang kasama ng main verb mo, automatic, they are past participle. Ano pong example? We have here the example, have gone. So, yung have mo, yan po si auxiliary or helping verb. Yung gone mo is the main verb, which is the past participle. So, kapag nakakita kayo ng sentence na may katabi si main verb mo na helping verb or main verb, that is a past participle. But if ever there is none, that is only a simple past tense of the verb. Malinaw po yan. Let us test if you already understand me while discussing earlier. On page 5 of your module 3, let us read the following sentence below. On the space provided before the number, write past tense if the underlined verb used is in past tense and past participle if it is in past participle. We have number 1. The construction workers have built that school building. What do you think is the answer? Very good. The answer is past participle. Why? Because beside built, you have your auxiliary or helping verb. What is the helping verb? In number 1, we have. So it have built. So if ever there are two words or an auxiliary or helping verb besides your main verb, it is a past participle. Let us now go on page 6 of your module 3. We are now on what's new. Read the article to learn and appreciate our fellow men. The title of the article is Bayanihan, Our Antibody by Evony V. de la Cruz. After reading the article on page number 7, you have to read the sentences below and underline the subject of each sentence. So for subject A and subject B, you have to underline the subject. Number 1 and number 2. And then after underlining the subject for subject A and B, you will answer the following questions on page number 8. On page 8 of your module 3, we have what is it? It is the main discussion of the topic. We will now discuss the difference between active and passive voice. What is the voice? The voice of verb tells whether the subject of the sentence performs or receives the action. In English, there are two voices. We have active and passive. The sentence is in active voice when the subject performs of the action. We have the active here as an example of the sentence, President Rodrigo Duterte signed the law. So President Rodrigo Duterte is the subject because the subject is the main topic of a sentence and the doer of the action. Signed is the verb. Why? Because it is the action done by the subject, and the object, which is the law, is the receiver of the action done by the subject. President Rodrigo Duterte signed the law. President Rodrigo Duterte is the subject, the verb is signed, the law is the object. Next, we have the passive voice. When the subject is the receiver of the action, the verb is said to be in the passive voice. Here is the example. The law was signed by President Rodrigo Duterte. The law now is the subject. Was signed is your verb. And we have the added word by. And then we have President Rodrigo Duterte as the agent or the object. The one receiving now the action is President Rodrigo Duterte. As you can see, there is changes in structure or arrangement of the elements of the sentence. When will we use active and passive voice? If we use passive and active voices improperly, this may lead to miscommunication. So we use active voice first to express direct action. Next, to achieve clear, concise, and interesting writing. On the other hand, we use passive voice when the doer is unknown. Second, we use passive voice when we want to focus attention on the person or thing being affected by an action. And lastly, we use passive voice to particularly helpful when describing a specific process. What is the clue that the sentence is in passive voice? Most of the time, in passive sentence, we use the word by when we want to say who or what did the action. Okay, first example, we are encouraged by our teachers. Second example, the patients are being treated by doctors. So, as you can see, if it is in passive, there is a word by most of the time. Here are examples of sentences in active voice and passive voice in different tenses. We will give an example for each tenses of the verb. In present tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. We have the object plus are or is plus past participle of the verb plus by plus subject. So as you can see in the example, we have subject, verb, object, and then for the second part, second column, we have the active and the passive for the third column. So for active voice, we have the teacher teaches the students. So our subject is the teacher, our verb is teaches, and our object is the students for active. But as you can observe, our subject, the teacher in active, will become our object in the passive voice. And then vice versa, the object, the students in the active voice will become our subject in passive voice. So for passive, we have the students are taught by teacher. In past tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. Object plus was or were plus past participle of the verb plus by plus subject. We will know that we will use was or were if the subject is in past tense. How will we know? Because there, our subject is the teacher, our verb is taught, and our object is the students. The verb is taught, which is the past tense of teach. Therefore, we will not use is or are. We will use was or were. There, our teacher, the subject in our active voice will become the object for passive voice. And then, our object, the students, will become the subject in active voice of the verb. So now, the students, is it singular or plural? The students is plural. Therefore, we will use, instead of was, we will use where, then plus past participle of the verb, which is taught, and then plus by, the word by, and then the teacher. So our active will be the teacher taught the students, and our passive voice will become the students were taught by the teacher. In future tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. We have your object plus will plus be plus past participle of the verb plus by plus the subject. So here we have our active voice of the verb. This sentence is the teacher will teach the students. So we will know that it is in the future tense because of the word teach. Now, our subject, the teacher, will again become our object in the passive voice of the verb. And then our object will become our subject, which is the students. The students now will become our subject in the passive voice, and then our sentence will become the students will be taught by the teacher. There. Next. In present, progressive, or continuous tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. First, the object plus am, is, or are, plus being, plus past participle of the verb, plus by, plus the subject. So for active, we have Sam is writing the letter for teachers. So Sam is our subject because Sam is the doer of the action, which is writing, and therefore the subject Sam will become our object in the passive voice. And vice versa, our object, the letter, will become our subject in the passive voice of the verb. Okay, so from Sam is writing the letters for teachers, in passive voice it will become the letter for teachers is being written by Sam. Okay. There, our verb is being written because our subject is letter, which is singular. But if ever our subject will be changed into the letters, we will also use are being written, are for plural. But since the letter is singular, we will be using is. Okay, next, we have in past progressive or continuous tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. We have object plus was or were plus being plus past participle of the verb plus by plus the subject. So again, here we have inactive. The subject is Sam. The verb is was writing. The object is the letter for teachers. So again, Sam will become your object there by Sam. Do not forget the word by. And then your object, the letter for teachers, will become your subject. So first we'll have Sam was writing the letter for teachers. And then for passive, the letter for teachers was being written by Sam. In future progressive or continuous tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. We have object plus will be plus being plus past participle of the verb plus by plus the subject. How will we know that the verb is in future progressive or continuous tense if it is in will be? Okay, there is will be in the verb. So in active voice, for example, we have the subject Sam, we have the verb will be writing, and then for the object, we have the letter for teachers. So again, we will repeat the action. Sam, the subject, will become the object in passive voice, and then the object, the letter for teachers, will become our subject in passive voice. So the letter for teachers will be being written by Sam. Do not forget the word by. In present perfect tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. We have the object plus has for singular or have for plural, been, has or have been, plus past participle of the verb, plus by, plus subject. So here we have the example for subject they, for verb have visited, for object Boracay. So we will know that it is in present perfect tense if the verb is have plus the main verb. Have visited, have gone. That is an example of present perfect tense. So they there is plural. So therefore, they have visited. But in passive voice, Boracay, the object will become our subject while they will become them. Okay. So from active, it will become passive voice. Boracay has been visited by them. So next, we have in past perfect tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. We have the object plus had been plus past participle of the verb plus by plus the subject. So our subject here is they, our verb had visited plus the object Boracay. So you will know that the verb is in past perfect tense if you are using had as the auxiliary verb or the helping verb. So we have there our subject, which is they, will become them. In the passive, it will also become the object. And then our object, Boracay, will become our subject. So now we will have the sentence in passive voice, which is Boracay plus the had been plus the past participle of the verb visited plus the word by, and then our subject now them. So from active, they had visited Boracay. In passive voice, Boracay had been visited by them. In future perfect tense, you must remember this pattern in turning active to passive voice. We have the object plus will have been plus past participle of the verb plus by plus subject. So we have the subject here for active, they. For verb, will have visited. For object, we have Boracay. So we'll know that it is in future perfect tense if it is using will have plus the past participle. Our they, now again, we will repeat, will become our object, and they, a personal pronoun, will become them when it is used as an object. And Boracay now will become our subject in passive voice. So Boracay plus will have been plus visited, which is the past participle of the verb visit by them. So now active, they will have visited Boracay. Passive, Boracay will have been visited by them. Okay, before answering activities or transforming active to passive voice and vice versa, passive to active, you have to take note of usage of personal pronouns here. So we have the singular first person, second person, third person, and singular plural first person to third person. So what are the examples? So the first example is first person is I. If you use I as an object, it will become me, not I. For example, for subject, you use it as I love you. If you use I as an object, it will become you are loved by me, not you are loved by I. It is not like that. Therefore, when you use I as an object, it will become me. Second person, the same. You will be still you, even if it is used as an object in the sentence. And third person, he, she, it will become him, her, it, once it is used as an object in the sentence. For the plural, we have we, it will become us if it is used as an object. For second person, still the same, you will become you, still you. Third person, they, as a subject, will become them once it is used as an object in the sentence.
All right, so Teacher Cha already explained to you the concept of the active and passive voice. Now, let's go to page 12. What's more? And let's start with the independent activity 1. Analyze the given statement. Put check mark if the statement is true and X if the statement is false. So based on the direction, what you are going to do is that if the statement in each number is true and correct, you will put check on the box. And if the statement is not correct, you will put X mark. Let's try the first number. We use the active voice if the doer is unknown. So in this number, the answer here is false because it should be passive voice instead of active voice. So we will put X mark, okay? Now for the next one, independent assessment 1, read the following sentences. Underline the verb used in each sentence and tell whether the sentence is active or passive. Write your answer on the space provided before each number. So, in this part, first thing you will do is to underline the verb in each sentence. Then, after you underline, you will identify if the sentence is in active or in passive voice. Okay, let's try number 1. Miss De La Cruz taught us grammar. So in this sentence, the verb is taught. So we will underline taught. And then after that, we will identify if it's active or passive. So number 1 is in active voice. Why is it in active voice? Because the verb in the sentence number 1 is on its simple past tense. Okay? Now let's proceed with the independent activity 2. Box the correct helping verb that will make the sentence in the passive voice correct. So, for numbers 1 to 5, all the numbers here are in passive voice. So all the sentences are in passive voice. So the thing that you will do is to choose the correct helping verb to use in the sentence. Okay, let's try number one. Help is or are given by the government. Since help is singular word, the helping verb that we will use is in singular form. So it will be the verb is. Okay, so you will box is. Okay, now let's proceed with the next page, independent assessment 2. Read the sentences carefully. Identify whether each sentence is active or passive based on the verb used. Write your answer on the space provided before each number. So, in this activity, what you will do is to identify. You will only identify if the sentence is active or passive voice. Okay? Let's try number one. The healthcare workers wore their personal protective equipment or PPE. So in this sentence, since the verb wore is in the simple past tense, therefore the voice of the sentence is active. So you will write active. Okay. Oh, again, a hint, if the sentence is passive, is when you read or when you see the word by in the sentence. Okay? Now, letter B, complete each sentence by choosing between the active and passive voice of the verb in the parentheses. Box your answer. Again, you need to box the correct answer inside the parentheses. Let's have number one. The lesson taught was taught to the students. So we will choose if it's taught or was taught. And the correct answer in number one is was taught. Therefore, we will box was taught. Okay. Now let's proceed with independent activity 3. Letter A. Encircle the letter of the correct form of passive sentence in each number. So let's have number one. My father bought the laptop. So sentence number one is in the active voice. So you will choose which of the two choices has the correct passive form of the sentence. Is it A, the laptop was bought by my father, or B, the laptop is bought by my father? Okay. And the correct answer is letter A. So you will encircle letter A. Okay. On letter B on page 14, write an active and passive sentence using the illustration shown below. Choose an appropriate tense in your sentence. Let's take number one for example. The example sentence in the first one is the girl is watering the plant. As you can see, the verb in the sentence is watering is in the present progressive. Okay? So, the passive form of it is the plant is being watered by the girl. Okay? Let's proceed to the next page, Independent Assessment 3. For letter A, transform the following sentences in passive voice. The sentences in letter A are all in active voice, so your task is to transform them into their passive voice. Let's have number one for example. The teacher introduces a new lesson to the students. Okay, let's first identify the structure of this sentence. The subject is the teacher, whereas the verb is introduces and the object is a new lesson. Informing the passive form of this sentence, the object comes first in the sentence, followed by the verb, and then the teacher. Okay, so it will be like this. A new lesson is introduced to the students by the teacher. Okay, it goes like that. For letter B, Transform the following sentences in active voice. So it's the opposite of letter A. If letter A is the sentence are all in active voice, in letter B, the sentences are all in passive voice. So your task is to transform them into their active voice. Let's try the first one. The ball was kicked by Kenneth. Okay. So let's first identify who kicked the ball. Kenneth. So Kenneth will be placed on the first part of the sentence. And then what did he do? He kicked. And then what did he kick? The ball. So the passive voice for it would be Kenneth kicked the ball. Like that. Okay? For the next activity, what I can do in your own opinion and in your own idea, how can you identify if the sentence is active or passive? How will you change it from active to passive? Okay, so it's based on your opinion and in your idea. On page 16, write a short paragraph about the things you have done during COVID 19. Use active voice in writing your content. So, in this part, you will write at least one or two paragraphs about the things that you have done or accomplished during COVID 19. It can be things you have learned, like learning how to cook, learning how to play a game, or learning some things. Or it can also be like getting closer with your family during this time while you stay at home. Okay. So, and also, in constructing your sentences, make sure that you will use active voice. Okay. For assessment, letter A, fill in the blanks with the appropriate voice of the verb indicated in the parentheses. Use the simple tense. So let's try number one. Jenny blank the old lady yesterday. So the words written inside the parenthesis is past, which means past tense, and help. Okay, so it means that you will write the past tense of the word help. So the past tense of the word help is helped. So it could be Jenny helped the old lady yesterday. Okay. For letter B, transform the following sentences from active to passive. Okay? It's just the same with the previous activity that we did a while ago. Let's have number 6. They have canceled the meeting. So the passive form for it would be the meeting has been canceled by them. Okay? Next, for letter C, transform the following sentences from active to passive. Let's have number 11, for example. All inquiries are being answered by the administrator. So the active voice for it is the administrator is answering all inquiries. Okay? Last activity is the additional activities on page 17. Write a 3-paragraph telling a story about people's experience during COVID 19. Use the active and passive voice meaningfully and underline the active voice and box the passive voice. Okay? So in this activity, you will write 3-paragraph story about the experiences of the people during COVID-19. You can search on the internet for informations. You can also watch news about it to come up with a good output. Hello again, everyone. We have just finished the Module 3 for Quarter 1 in English 7. I hope you had a great time answering this module. See you next time in our next video, and thank you for watching. Bye!